Welcome everyone to Defender for Cloud in the Field. I want to say thank you again for the support. Make sure to subscribe. The AKA link is right here in the screen. Make sure to go there, subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when new videos are uploaded. And with that, let's talk about some of the cool stuff that my friend Lior Arviv is presenting. And Lior, thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Yuri.
Lior, before we go into the details about some of the things that were released at Ignite from you and your team, can you just give a brief description about what you do for Microsoft?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Lior Arviv. I'm a program manager within the Microsoft Defender for Cloud product team, and I'm focusing on Secure Score, a recommendation platform, and our reporting capabilities.
Awesome. Lior, one of the things that I know that your team and you been working a lot of stuff, so I want you to go in different areas first. So let's talk about one of the first things that to me is a little detail but very important, which is the refresh secure recommendations UI. What did we do in this area to improve the experience?
Sure. So as you mentioned, our recommendation UI has just refreshed, and we did that to help our customers to focus on what's matter most, which is recommendations that are mapped to secure score and help you to increase the score and support the security posture in your organization. So for that, we created two new tabs, one which is secure score recommendations that affect your score directly, and all the others under the all recommendations, which provide you kind of best practices and ability to see all recommendations, which not generally mapped to the secure score.
Awesome. Okay, that's a very good addition. Is this on the same line as the related recommendation sections, or the related recommendation sections a different effort?
So a related recommendation is a different effort to help customer to understand the dependencies between recommendations. For example, we have all the containers Kubernetes recommendation that to be able to implement them or remediate them, you need to have a prerequisites fulfilled or completed before proceeding to those recommendations. So to show you the dependencies between recommendations, we added a new section on each recommendation that represents the different relationship types. For example, the prerequisites, alternative, and dependent.
Is this information something that is only available on the UI, or if I export, this information will also be exported?
So currently, this type of information is only on the UI, but based on customer feedback, we would like to add it on the API as well.
Okay, excellent. And the same thing for the previous one, right? The refresh recommendation is something that is only affecting the UI, correct?
Right. Of course, you can see, if you pull the information from API, you can see all the recommendations that mapped to security control, so you can distinguish between the one that affects your score directly or not. But currently, those two features are UI specifically.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we released at Ignite that to me was really interesting is the MITRE ATT&CK Framework mapping to recommendations. Because every time that we think about MITRE, we think more about threat detection, and we already have this done on the secure alerts. There is a mapping there. I don't think there is a lot of people that understand that can also be used in a proactive manner for the recommendation perspective. So explain a little bit about the rationale of doing that, and what is the advantage of having this information as part of the recommendation.
So yeah, that's a great point. So we all have security recommendation in place that we need to remediate and complete. And we wanted to show our customers the security recommendation and their position against the MITRE ATT&CK Framework to provide more context and understand the associated risk if you don't remediate those recommendations. And by having the mapping to the MITRE framework, which is widely common in the industry, we took both the list of tactics and the related techniques and map it to the majority of the recommendations. So customers can focus not just on the specific tactics that they want, and also on the techniques. And just to give an example for it, so the tactics itself represents the why, for the reason for performing an action. So if an attacker wants to achieve a credential, that's the tactic. And the addition to that is the technique. It represents the how the attacker is going to take those credentials by dumping the credential and getting access to a specific resource. So by having those two mapping into the recommendations, you can get a content and start remediate the recommendations that you want to focus on a specific pillar in the MITRE framework. And that's also available on the API, and we will see in a minute.
Awesome. So before we go to the API discussion, I just want to switch to the demo environment, and let's focus the demo on the MITRE first, and then you can talk about the other two enhancements that you mentioned before. Okay, so let's switch to the demo environment now, so you can go through that.
Yes, sure. So as you can see here, I'm on the recommendation on the aggregated view of recommendations. And for the majority on recommendation, excluding all the prerequisites one, we added the context of having both tactics and techniques. So for example, I can look for a specific recommendation, but it's available on most of them. I have a storage access, public access should be disallowed. Clicking on the recommendation, you can see now on the top script of the recommendation, we have both tactics and techniques, which providing more context on the specific recommendation. I can see that the tactics and the techniques that map to this recommendation is the initial access. So I can click more to see more on specific tactic on the MITRE framework portal. And especially if I want to see the relevant techniques, I can see the exploit public facing application, which is very logical because storage accounts which are exposed to the internet, it's kind of an entry point for getting an initial access for an application, specifically for production ones. So I can get more context against the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So we saw the mapping on the storage account, but we can also saw the mapping on a different recommendations, like the management port should be closed on your virtual machines. And here we will see the same initial access, but here you see a different techniques, which is external remote services, both sharing the same tactic, but a different techniques. So you know what is the security risk regarding this specific recommendation. That's one part, but sometimes you want to get this kind of information in a different pivot. And that's the reason why we also added a new filter to the filters sections on the recommendation UI. So in addition to all the current one, we added also the tactics. So here you can see a list of tactics. The tactics or the mapping itself is relevant for the latest framework, which is version 9. So I can see a list of tactics, and now I can focus on a different tactic for example, credential access. So selecting the relevant tactic will filter the list of the recommendation, and then I can focus on the relevant ones. Another example that we can see both tactics and techniques is a different recommendation, for example, the vulnerabilities on virtual machines. Here, since it's related to vulnerabilities, I expect to see more tactics and techniques mapped. So clicking on that section, I can see a graph which represents the different tactics across the cyber kill chain. And then we get a list of both tactics and the relevant techniques listed by the order of the cyber kill chain, the attack on the cyber kill chain. So for example, I can see initial access and then the relevant techniques. Customers also told us that they would like to see the ID of the techniques on the UI as well, so we presented it, and also a link that takes you directly to the MITRE website to see more information regarding each specific tactic and technique. So we saw two examples for having the mapping on the user interface, but we also exposed the information for you available on Azure Resource Graph and also on our API. So querying the data using Azure API, Azure Resource Graph API, you can see both tactics and techniques available. So for that, you can leverage the data and create advanced reporting, like leveraging workbooks with resource graph queries, or export the data to a CSV and get the same data in a CSV format. And soon you will also be able to see the information by leveraging continuous export capability, which allow you to stream the data to external data source, for example, Log Analytics workspace or Event Hub.
Amazing, Lior. Amazing. That's really good work. Congratulations for getting this out there. Now let's go real quick to the other two things that you mentioned during the first part of the interview, which are the security refresh and the dependencies. How can I see that?
So looking again on the recommendation, the aggregated recommendation list, we can see two new tabs on the top section. One which represents the scored recommendations, the ones that affect my scores, the ones that I need to focus on. And the other tab, the all recommendation, which represents the non-scored ones and also recommendations that are relevant for the different regulatory compliance standards. So on the secure score ones, I get, of course, the mapping of the controls, the security controls, and the related recommendations. And on the all recommendations tab, I get a flat view of all recommendations from the different cloud environments, and also kind of an indications for the completed recommendation by the severity, the resource health, all the resources and the recommendations that are unhealthy, healthy, and not applicable, and also the ability to filter by a specific initiative. So if I want to focus on the ones that are relevant to AWS Foundation best practices, I can select just that and start remediate based on that and switch between those two tabs. So regarding the related recommendation, we have a scenario that we want to focus on a recommendation, but we sometimes don't know what is the prerequisites that I need to complete before remediating a recommendation. So let's take, for example, the vulnerabilities on virtual machines. Clicking on a recommendation, I can see a new section called Related Recommendations. And we have basically three different dependency or relationship type. The first one is a prerequisites, a recommendation that needs to be completed in order to use the selected recommendation. So on that example, I have vulnerabilities on virtual machines, but the prerequisites is to install the agent, the scanner, to scan vulnerabilities, and then I can see the findings on the UI. So I see that that's the prerequisites that I need to complete. I see how many affected resources, how many unhealthy remaining out of the total for the selected recommendation which is dependent on. Clicking on the recommendation, I can see a different view. So that's the prerequisites, but I can also see what is dependent on that. So vulnerability of the machine is dependent on the scanner that needs to be installed first on a machine. And we also have another dependency type, which is an alternative, which basically provides a different way to accomplish the security goal for a selected recommendation.
All right.
So that's
really helpful. And I'm pretty sure that the next question, and you already answered this question, is can I also get this via API? But as you said, this is coming soon, the API, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And talking about API, let me switch back here for our conversation. What do we have news on the API space?
So It's true that we are adding more capabilities on the UI, but customers also want to leverage data on the API. And especially on the API space, we added 4 new fields that customers can leverage to create custom reporting and for many other use cases. So let me switch to a recommendation that already completed the ones that we used previously. So by having more fields on the API, for example, we can query, clicking on the open query to see the underlying data that we have on Azure Resource Graph. And let's see examples for 4 new fields that we recently added. So the first one is the ability to know when exactly a resource was first scanned and get a recommendation. The field that is available is the first evaluation date. When we actually scanned a resource and created a recommendation, we put a date so you can see what are all the new resources that were added in a specific time frame. But that's just one scenario. Sometimes I want to calculate how much time a resource was being unhealthy, so I can use a different field, which is the status change date. So when a resource changes its status, for example, from unhealthy to healthy, I can calculate the time range between those 2 fields and see how much time the resource was unhealthy. So those 2 fields are now available on Azure Resource Graph and on API. Just a little note on the status change date. When we scan a resource for the first time, both fields will share the same date until there is a change, and then we will change the status change date field. And just specifically on those 2, we already have artifacts on our GitHub repository that creates an automation on top of those fields to provide you more reports, for example, on new resources that just been added as an unhealthy resources, or the ones that are now healthy, so you can see how many resources are now healthy, so you can track the progress over time. Let's see an example for 2 other fields that we just added. So when we add a new recommendation to the platform, customer wants to know or to track all the new recommendations, all the ones that we moved from the public public preview status to a GA one, or just to get information on all the recommendations that we are going to deprecate or replace with other recommendations. So the same on Azure Resource Graph, we added 2 new fields, publish dates and deprecation dates. So customers can leverage those 2 fields and know when a recommendation was first added to security as a security recommendation, and when we are going to deprecate specific recommendations.
Excellent, Lior. Very good information. Thank you very much. A lot of things, a lot of details in the UI, a lot of details available also via API, Azure Resource Graph, new capabilities. Overall, amazing work. Again, congratulations for all those things that you guys released at Ignite, you and your team. Really good work.
Thank you.
All right, any final considerations before we wrap up today's episode?
Yes, we can just speak on something that customers ask us recently and soon will be available. It's the identity exemption. We know that we have many features that help you to fine-tune your security based on your needs, and secure score based on your needs, and exemption is one of them. And today we have different identity recommendations. Part of them is to enable MFA, the other ones to remove unnecessary external accounts, or the ones that are blocked on the Azure AD part, but still assigned on a subscription. So soon you will be able to exempt specific accounts for being evaluated on a subscription on the different identity recommendations. We use it for use cases like if you have an account which is used as a break the glass accounts, or for specific external accounts that needs to have access, but enable the MFA is not enabled yet, but you know that there is a specific justification for that. And that's a great opportunity also to mention the upcoming changes article that we have, so you can see the changes that we are adding to the recommendations and not just the ones regarding the account exception. So let me show you how it's gonna look like. So let's take, for example, the enable MFA on accounts that has the owner permissions. So we migrated the assessment or the recommendation to be as a top recommendation with findings, where accounts are actually the findings, where we can exempt one or two, depends on the needs. Again, we have now the freshness time, and by the way, we are gonna cut it by half. And also you can see the relevant tactics and techniques. But in this scenario, I see a list of accounts that are currently has the owner permission on a specific subscription, but not yet enabled for MFA. In my specific case, I want to exempt one of them, because if I enable MFA on all of them except one, my subscription will still be considered as unhealthy, so I cannot complete this recommendation at all. So expanding the affected resources, I can see my single subscription. Clicking on it, I can see a list of recommendations. So now with the new capability of account exemption, I can select a specific accounts that I know I have a clear justifications why they need to be excluded from being evaluated in the recommendation. I can select multiple of them and click on create an exemption. Here I can see the list of accounts on a specific subscription. In that case, it's the MSDN ones and the account ID. I can give an explanation or justification and click on exempt accounts. It will take up to 30 minutes for the changes to take effect. And once it takes effect, you will be able to see all those exempted accounts. And for all the other accounts, I can go ahead and enable MFA that will help me to make this subscription healthy and get the points that will help me to increase the score and be compliant.
Awesome, Lior. I heard a lot about this request, so I'm really glad that this is coming up. So this is not available yet, but it's coming soon, you said, right?
Yes, it's coming soon, and you can get notification on that by using the article or the upcoming changes alongside with the other capabilities that we are adding to the identity recommendations.
Awesome. Lior, thank you very much for your time. Truly appreciate. Again, congratulations on all the new things, and hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. See you again soon, Yuri.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the show again. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. We have much more to come. See you next time.